The year is 2016, and under normal circumstances, the Cavaliers would be winning the title. But this is not the same NBA we're familiar with. According to 2K, the Warriors are the rightful champions for this season. Which brings up the question, what other parts of history are going to change? Well, as we progress towards the modern day, we'll see plenty of familiar faces suit up for different franchises. And one of the most important would be Kevin Durant, as his move away from Oklahoma City won't be as controversial in this universe compared to real life, as instead of going to the Warriors, he's heading over to the Spurs to team up with Kawhi. However, he's not the only person who finds himself on a different team. Take Ben Simmons, for example, who's winning the Rookie of the Year as a Denver Nugget, and he'll be the Robin to Jokic's Batman, while the Robin from real-life Jamal Murray is now a Los Angeles Laker. However, while a lot has changed, certain things would stay the same. Russell Westbrook would be winning the 2017 MVP again, and for a third straight season, the Cavaliers and the Warriors would be meeting up in the finals. But the circumstances now are far different than the lopsided matchup that took place in real life. In the absence of KD, the Warriors have made some additions to the team, but clearly they're not as impactful as Durant and not enough to pull off another title. The LeBron-led Cavaliers would have the number this time, and they'd be winning the series 4-1. So now with the 2017 season done, it's time to move on to 2018 and introduce some very important rookies, one of which being Jason Tatum, who's winning the Rookie of the Year award on the Utah Jazz after averaging 20 while only being 19. But in the case of the Celtics, they would be drafting Donovan Mitchell second overall, so their rebuild is also off to a good start. But as it's always been, the league's best storylines would come from the league's best players. Russell Westbrook would be following in KD's footsteps by leaving OKC, and he would have a pretty solid season with the Heat, finishing second in the MVP race. But for LeBron James, who would finish in first place to win the award, his season would be ending in horrendous fashion. During the second round of the playoffs, he would find himself losing to a Chicago Bulls team that is very much an underdog compared to the defending champs. And while yes, LeBron and Kyrie have stuck together for an extra season, there's no guarantee that continues. This missed opportunity could really bite Cleveland in the future. But for now, if we fast forward to the finals, we would see a very random matchup, as that same Bulls team would be facing the Memphis Grizzlies, who've recently added the services of Jimmy Butler. And he would do what he does best, go under the radar for an entire season and make history in the playoffs. The Memphis Grizzlies would be winning the 2018 championship, the first in franchise's history, and Jimmy Buckets is a first-time Finals MVP. If you're talking about changing legacies, he's a great example, and as we turn the page onto the 2019 season, we'd see a very impressive crop of rookies begin their stories in hopes of doing the same. And it all starts off with Luka Doncic, who's going from rivals to teammates with Devin Booker in Phoenix. The Suns as a franchise have seen some pretty high levels of success in real life, and there's a chance that somehow it could get even better. But not to be outdone would be the Boston Celtics, who are adding Trae Young to what's quietly a pretty insane young starting five, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not too far away from his home country of Canada, now leading the Detroit Pistons. All three of these franchises are great bets to become contenders one day. But as far as the actual finals go, there would be some more battle-tested stars in the running. Representing the East would be the Milwaukee Bucks, who are led by Giannis and Chris Middleton, and they would be taking a 3-2 lead over the San Antonio Spurs, who have the previously mentioned duo of KD and Kawhi. However, the Spurs have arguably the league's best duo, one that can compete on both ends, and they would be taking Game 6 in Milwaukee. And in Game 7, which would be played in San Antonio, Kawhi and KD would get to their patented mid-range over and over until eventually the Spurs would win, completing the 3-2 comeback to walk away as 2019 champions. And this one is especially important for KD, as while yes, he's on a fantastic team, there's no way he would see the same level of scrutiny as his move to the Warriors in real life. If anything, he's still one of the league's most beloved players. However, as we enter the 2020 season, we would see another fan favorite enter the league. This year's Rookie of the Year would be Ja Morant, who's the newest Atlanta Hawk, narrowly defeating Zion Williamson for the award, who's trying to lift up a struggling Wizards franchise. But in terms of roster moves, two would really shine. Anthony Davis would be heading to Houston to pair up with James Harden, now giving them an elite guard and big man duo that would be finishing in third place in the West. While LeBron James would be staying in the Eastern Conference after playing an extra season with the Cavs, heading to the Big Apple to pair up with Kristaps Porzingis and Bam Adebayo. Only time will tell how either of these moves will ultimately impact the league. At the moment, they're not the centers of attention when it comes to the 2020 season. Instead, the most competitive matchup of the year would be a 7-game conference finals between Phoenix and Golden State, the two best records in the NBA. The Steph Curry team is never really out of contention, and despite only being in year number 2, Luka's become a perfect backcourt mate to pair it with Devin Booker. But in the end, only one of these fantastic teams can actually advance, and that would be the Suns, who'd shortly after head to the NBA Finals for a matchup with a very solid Orlando Magic squad. But with the Warriors and their hardest possible matchup behind them, they would win this one in 6. Luka Doncic has won Finals MVP in only his second year, and while the Suns appeared to be a championship contender with his arrival, it happened way sooner than anyone probably anticipated. But winning back-to-back championships in this universe has been basically impossible for the last few years. It remains to be seen if the Suns can be the ones to pull it off in 2021, as there's a few factors that are working against them. LeBron James would be returning to the finals with the New York Knicks, and on the other end, the San Antonio Spurs would be on their tail. Right now we're at the start of a legendary rivalry. These two teams are the faces of the league, and it's all starting with Game 7 of the 2021 Western Conference Finals, where the 2019 champion Spurs would be up by 4 with about 4 minutes remaining against the 2020 champion Suns. Here we go, Game 7. The last two champions were starting off with a Rudy Gobert fadeaway with 4 minutes left in a 4-point game. Did not expect that out of all the offensive talent on the floor. That's how we would be starting off. Kawhi Leonard with it, about to get the screen from Hartenstein. San Antonio trying to extend their 4-point lead, blocked by Gobert, the redemption. Devin Booker's gonna push it up the court, over to Luka, being guarded by Caruso, size advantage, he kicks it out, gets it right back. He's gonna back his way in, the left-handed hook shot is good. A pretty exciting start to the final few minutes. The ball finds Caruso, over to Tony Allen. Kawhi Leonard about to pass it over to KD on the right wing. They clear it out for him. He's guarded by Trey Lyles, standing at 6'10". No size advantage. Gets Lyles stumbling into the paint. Another block by Rudy, putting the team on his back after missing that crazy fadeaway. Markkanen with the shot over Hartenstein. It's off. Rebounded by Leonard. 2-point lead for San Antonio with 3 minutes left. Caruso driving into the paint, dunks over Gobert. Chaos in Game 7, Western Conference Finals. The winner plays New York. Markkanen kicks it out to Booker. About to set the screen. Booker going to his left, the half spin. The pull-up, 15-footer. It's in. Huge shot by Booker. It's a 2-point game, 2:45 remaining. Caruso walking it up. Looks like they're running a play for Durant. Still being guarded by Trey Lyles. Hartenstein sets the screen. KD at the elbow. Hesitation, step back, free throw line, 2 pump fakes, out to Kawhi. He shoots it over the 7-foot Markkanen. He gets the lucky bounce. Could that have been the dagger? Devin Booker all the way into the paint, fouled by Hartenstein. Booker made the first free throw, second cuts it down to 3. San Antonio trying to return to the finals for the first time since 2019. Phoenix trying to repeat finals appearances. Kawhi finds some space, he misses that one. Booker's gonna push in transition. It's been all him down the stretch, over to Luka. Guarded by Kawhi, gets... It's a 1-point game. 2K, Ronnie 2K. What was that? The ball finds Tony Allen. At the top of the key, over to Durant. Durant driving left, the spin move. Gets the step, he's fouled on a jumper. KD made the first free throw, second is good. 3-point lead for San Antonio. They've held on to the lead. When we jumped in, they had it at 4. Devin Booker stepping back at the mid-range. He misses that one. The Spurs are potentially a bucket away. Caruso's driving to the basket, and he's fouled by Doncic. If the Suns want to return to the finals, they'll desperately need a bucket here. Devin Booker with a left-handed layup over Tony Allen. A really good defender, albeit he is pretty old. Keeps them within striking distance. It's a one-possession game. Kawhi guarded by Markkanen, the 7-footer. No size advantage. Good defense by Markkanen. The fadeaway hits the front of the rim. Phoenix with a chance to tie it up with a 3. Markkanen trying to drive into the paint. He takes a wild layup over Caruso. Pretty much a floater, not really a layup. Forcing the issue, it works out. Phoenix desperately needing a stop. Gobert with the contest. Alex Caruso. Everything is happening down the stretch. It all started off with the Gobert fadeaway. Devin Booker trying to get into the paint. The short step back jumper is off. Good defense by Tony Allen. So after a couple of free throws and a few more possessions that wouldn't change the outcome of the game, the Spurs would be winning Game 7, proving that experience would prevail in their battle against the Suns. The Western Conference isn't so brutal in this universe, so there's a good chance that they'll cross paths again one day. But for now, we'd have a matchup between LeBron, Kawhi, and Kevin Durant in the finals. However, before we kick this off, we should add for context that LeBron most recently defeated a Boston Celtics Big Three to make it this far. So he would be battle ready, heading into San Antonio for Game 1, which the Knicks would wind up stealing to take home court advantage. And that Game 1 win would spark a trend, as with this series eventually being tied up 2-2, the New York Knicks would be winning another road game, taking Game 5 to go up 3-2. And at this point, as the series would go along, it would become increasingly clear that New York's roster might just be better, finishing it off with one more defensive stop. Caruso with it, over to Kawhi, a little bit of space from 3, doesn't take it, he's gonna go for a 2, and misses it! And New York would be winning the championship. It definitely stings for San Antonio after defeating the reigning champs in order to get here. But in their case, there would not be a storybook ending, and as we enter the 2022 season, their status as the West's best team is in some serious danger. But before we elaborate on them, we skipped over last year's draft class, so they of course need to be introduced, and it all starts off with Year 2 Anthony Edwards, who's paired up with Zion Williamson in Washington. No doubt the Wizards are in a better situation in this universe compared to real life. And as far as the 2021 draft class goes, these incoming crop of rookies would be led by Cade Cunningham. Instead of star hunting, the Nets are building from the ground up. But there would be other moves made in the background that are also different from real life. Giannis is no longer a Milwaukee Buck, and he's searching for championship number 1 on the Clippers. James Harden is still teamed up with Anthony Davis out in Houston, although it's not clear if he has enough prime years left to win a title. Paul George, ironically, is signing with the Oklahoma City Thunder in free agency, and the Golden State Warriors have strangely been running back almost the same roster for almost a decade. As great as Steph Curry is, annually averaging 30-plus points per game, it hasn't materialized in another championship, leading to players like Luka Doncic stealing the show, as he would be averaging a triple-double to win the league MVP for the 2022 season, carrying that momentum along with Booker into the conference finals, where they'd get their revenge on the Spurs to advance. And these two would be facing a brand new opponent in the finals, the Detroit Pistons, who are led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a fully healthy Lonzo Ball who's reached his full potential. But as far as these finals go, there would not be much to talk about. We would see a gentleman's sweep and another championship for the Suns duo. They lucked into the number 1 pick again in this universe, and evidently they made the right choice this time. But entering 2023, they would be losing a major piece, as Rudy Gobert would be moving on in free agency to a different team, which doesn't knock the Suns out of contention, but definitely makes it harder on them. However, that's only a couple out of several teams that are worth talking about. For instance, Kyrie Irving is still a Cleveland Cavalier after all this time, even being on the squad for longer than LeBron. And the Chicago Bulls are kicking off their reboot with Paolo Banchero as the number 1 pick. But keep in mind that other than him, this team is bad, and they'll be one of several rosters hoping to draft Victor Wembanyama in the summer. But it's time for the playoffs, and in the Eastern Conference Finals, we would see Anthony Edwards and Zion Williamson up against Shai's Pistons in a battle between the future faces of the NBA. And in a roundabout way, we would see a similar result to what we've seen in real life. SGA would be defeating Ant-Man to head to the finals, albeit this time it's not only his second go-around, but also his second matchup against the Suns. However, the Rudy Gobert size hole in the roster would be very apparent. The Suns wouldn't be able to stop Shai from scoring at will, and motivated by last year's loss in their home court, the Pistons would be forcing Game 7 and holding on to a 1-point lead with about 90 seconds left. Game 7, 2023 Finals. Lauri Markkanen top of the key, over to D-Book, back to Markkanen, over to Luka. No more Rudy Gobert on this team, he's replaced with Mo Bamba. Luka going all the way into the paint. The flashy pass over to Booker for the 2-pointer. Phoenix takes a 1-point lead with less than 90 seconds to play. Lonzo Ball, healthy in this universe. He gets 2 feet in the paint. He's gonna back it out. Shai is calling for it in the post, being guarded by Luka. Can't really move him off his spot. The pump fake. 7 seconds on the shot clock. Over to Lonzo, out to Barrett, over to Obi Toppin, over to Andre Drummond, the lifelong Piston, blocked by Bamba. Luka's gonna push it in transition, over to Rui Hachimura on the block. He's gonna pass it down to... Oh, I thought he was going to have that 2-way sequence, the legacy sequence. Detroit's going to pass it down to Shai in the post, this time guarded by Booker. The hook shot, the patented 2K long hook shot is in. The jump-ins today have been even more insane than usual. Markkanen over to Booker. They pass it around a bunch. Luka with the floater in the lane. The lead goes right back to Phoenix. The team that gets the next stop is probably going to win this game. They pass it into Shea. 33 seconds left. Obi Toppin's gonna set the screen. Shea with the step. Gets into the paint. Misses the dunk. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He went for the slam. It did not work out. Detroit had to foul a couple times. D-Book to the line makes the first, and the second to extend it to 3 is in. 24.6 remaining for the Pistons in the rematch against the Suns, trying to redeem themselves from last year's loss. The pass over to Lonzo Ball. 16 seconds left. He gets the screen from Drummond. They're going right back down to Shea in the post. He's gonna fade away over Luka for the lead. It's off. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the short jumper, is no good. Luka and Devin Booker are... Ooh, he missed the free throw. Okay. They're potentially on the brink of their third title as a trio, as a duo. Commentating is hard. 6 seconds left. Detroit's gonna need a miracle. Over to Lonzo. He's gonna fire a 3, but Detroit's gonna lose this one by 1. And this one's a serious missed opportunity for the Pistons. As if a few plays went their way, they would be the champions instead. But the margin for error is extremely small when it comes to winning titles, and as part of our reset, the biggest winner has to be the Suns. 3 titles with Booker and Luka together. And as we start up the 2024 season, that Detroit loss might sting a little more. The Indiana Pacers have recently drafted Victor Wembanyama, and the Eastern Conference is much stronger as a result. And in some ways, the celebration wouldn't stop for the Suns, as Luka would be winning his 3rd straight MVP. But last but not least, in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Washington Wizards would be getting their revenge on the Pistons, and what's the opposite result of last year. So much has changed compared to real life, but what always stays the same is the fragility of a championship window. A lesson that applies to both the Pistons, and thanks to Ant-Man and Zion, the Suns as well. They'd be the ones to finally topple this Western Conference giant and win the 2024 championship. As bad as it is in real life, the Washington Wizards are huge winners in this universe. And after a 7-game battle with Paul George's Thunder in the 2025 finals, they'd be going back-to-back. We've now hit the modern day, and the history and future of the NBA barely holds any resemblance to real life. So it would be a shame if we didn't cover the rest of the 2020s. It's time to kick off 2026, where Cooper Flagg would be winning Rookie of the Year on the Memphis Grizzlies, who jumped up 8 spots in the lottery and is being mentored by former champion Jimmy Butler. However, the most important regular season award would be heading over to Dallas, as Jokic would be winning the MVP as a member of the Mavs. And it's coming at an interesting time as he's a free agent after the season ends. But as far as the playoffs go, specifically the finals, the Wizards would be making it again, now looking for the 3-peat. But they would be facing an uphill battle, the league's best record, and a duo of Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton. A duo so dominant that even though the series would be starting off with a 1-1 tie, Utah would be winning 3 of the next 4 to secure the series 4-2, putting an end to Washington's good fortune for now and setting us up for 2027. And it all starts off with the alien out in Indiana, as Victor Wembanyama would be winning this year's MVP. AJ DeBansa would be winning Rookie of the Year on the Chicago Bulls. And last year's MVP Nikola Jokic would be taking his talents to Minnesota, which is an interesting situation for multiple reasons. The biggest of all would be Karl Anthony Towns. He's had a drastically different career in real life, as in the background sneakily, he's won 2 MVP awards as well, which would make it extremely surprising that they'd be upset 4-1 in the finals by the Charlotte Hornets. What looked to be an all-time duo is being sent home by a roster that doesn't have a 2027 All-Star in this universe. So obviously not an ideal ending for the Timberwolves. Now with it being time to move on to 2028, the spotlight would be completely off of them, as not only would the Jazz be representing the West in next year's finals, but they would be defeating the Wizards again. However, aside from the result, it's pretty interesting to see these 2 franchises make repeated trips to the finals, considering where they're at in real life. 2029 is here though, and after the retirement of Jimmy Butler, the Memphis Grizzlies would get to work on our most ironic roster move of the simulation. Luka Doncic would be teammates with Cooper Flagg. However, this wouldn't be the duo that would ultimately win this year's title. Jokic and Kat would be securing their first championships at age 35 and 34 respectively, after defeating Ja Morant's Atlanta Hawks. And considering the last few championships have all been won by stars in their 20s, they're an outlier for sure. But with that said, the NBA has changed a ton since it was reset in 2016. The Warriors and Cavs rivalry wasn't as expansive as in real life. KD peaked on a different team alongside a different star. The Suns righted a major wrong from real life and were rewarded, and teams not known for success in the actual NBA became common faces in the finals. But for 2030, we'd see one last team of destiny, one that would be prolific enough to take down the Memphis Grizzly duo of Luka Doncic and Cooper Flag. The Charlotte Hornets would be winning another championship without an all-star. If we're talking about franchises that have benefited from the reset, they might be number one. But instead of 2016, what would happen if the NBA was reset to 2003 instead? What other parts of NBA history would wind up changing? If you want to see how the last 2 decades of the NBA would be affected, click the video in the center of the screen.